The cabin hummed with that particular kind of quiet exclusive to first-class international flights. The gentle rustle of linen napkins, soft clinks of crystal glassware, the subdued lull of private conversations. At 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, this was where the world's elite reclined in flatbed seats and discussed market mergers, vineyard estates, and exclusive art auctions. Yet for all its polish, this rarefied airspace had never felt colder to Ava Carter. Ava adjusted the collar of her navy blue silk blouse, its subtle elegance a deliberate choice for this long haul from London to New York. Her skin, a rich mahogany, glowed softly under the dim cabin lighting. She didn't need diamonds or labels to command attention. Power radiated from her like heat off asphalt in the summer. But in this world, of quietly racist glances, patronizing smiles, and thinly veiled assumptions, Ava had learned long ago that presence alone wasn't enough. It started with something small. It always did. "Excuse me," Ava spoke softly to the passing flight attendant, a sharp-featured woman with tightly pinned blonde hair and the kind of smile that never touched her eyes. "I'll have the seared halibut, please." The attendant barely glanced at her. "That's reserved for premium first-class passengers, ma'am." Ava blinked, her perfectly manicured hand hovering mid-air. "This is first class," she replied evenly, tapping the boarding pass tucked into her seat pocket. "Seat 2A." The attendant's lips curved upward, a strained expression that could have passed for a grin if it weren't so thin. "I'm sorry, but we've run out." Ava's gaze swept discreetly across the cabin. Every other passenger, a sea of white faces, seemed to have their halibut. The scent lingered in the air, buttery and clean, like the insult itself. A man 2 rows ahead glanced back at her with a smirk. An influencer, she recognized him instantly. Tyler Drake, known for his viral reaction videos and travel vlogs drenched in entitled humor. His phone was already angled toward her. "She's really pressed about some fish," Tyler chuckled, the words not loud enough for the entire cabin, but perfectly pitched for his phone's microphone. Classic. Ava didn't flinch. Years in boardrooms where she was the only black woman, where men twice her age and half her intellect tried to outmaneuver her, had taught her restraint. But something about the casual cruelty of it, thousands of feet in the air, nowhere to leave, gnawed at her. The flight attendant returned with a tray holding the remaining entree option, overcooked chicken with congealed gravy and a single sprig of parsley. "This is all we have left," the attendant said, setting it down without a word of apology. Ava set her jaw. "I'll pass." Across the aisle, a white woman, early 50s in a cashmere wrap, leaned over, her voice oozing false concern. "You know, dear, sometimes it's best not to make a scene. We all have to accept our place." Ava didn't reply. Her phone, resting in her lap, buzzed softly. "Sasha," exec asked. "Call me when you can." "Is everything okay?" Ava's fingers moved swiftly, thumbs skimming over glass. "Text legal, prep for immediate HR review. Get my PR lead on standby. Contact Global Airlines board rep. Confirm our majority stake." Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She had been here before, in different forms. An investor dismissed as the assistant, a keynote speaker mistaken for catering staff. Every insult logged itself in a ledger in her mind. And like every ledger, the balance eventually came due. Tyler was still recording. Ava glanced toward him, her gaze so steady, so void of fear, that the influencer's smirk faltered. The pilot's voice crackled through the speakers, announcing their descent into JFK. Around her, passengers began gathering personal items, adjusting seats, and ordering final glasses of wine. "Hope you enjoyed your flight," the blonde attendant chirped to others as she passed, ignoring Ava entirely. Ava rose with deliberate grace, smoothing her trousers, her phone still in hand. 2 rows behind, Tyler whispered into his phone, "Wait till they see this upload." Ava smiled. It wasn't warm. If the people in this cabin believed they had humiliated a nameless, powerless black woman tonight, their understanding of power was about to shatter. She tapped one final message to Sasha. Have my driver meet me at gate 14. Tell legal to be ready at arrivals. Oh, and prep internal termination protocols. I'm cleaning house. The plane's wheels screeched against the tarmac. The final punctuation to a moment none of them yet realized would be replayed on news broadcasts and corporate audits for months to come. In the quiet hum of disembarking procedures, Ava Carter stepped out of her pod-like seat and strode down the aisle. A storm was about to land, and she was its epicenter. If this story of injustice and transformation moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that turn pain into power. The moment the aircraft doors opened, a wave of New York's thick, humid air spilled into the cabin. The elite passengers of first class, many of whom had barely acknowledged Ava Carter during the flight, gathered their carry-ons with the entitled ease of people accustomed to being first. First in line, first to be served, first to be believed. Ava remained seated. Tyler Drake, the influencer, was among the first to bolt for the exit. His phone was still clutched in his hand, screen dim from inactivity, but the smug certainty remained on his face. To him, the episode mid-flight was already content. A quick edit, a few snarky captions, and his followers would eat it up. The blonde attendant, Karen, Ava had noticed the name on her pin when she first boarded, moved down the aisle with practiced warmth. "Thank you for flying with us," she cooed to each passenger. Her voice dropped as she neared Ava's row. She didn't make eye contact. "Have a good evening." Ava spoke, low and unhurried. "You'll want to stay on board for a moment." Karen paused, the words registering slowly before plastering on a tight smile. "Excuse me?" Ava didn't repeat herself. She simply rose, collected her leather briefcase, and strode toward the exit. In the first-class galley, 2 other flight attendants stood murmuring. Ava recognized them. They'd giggled behind hands when Tyler made his pressed about some fish remark. The one named Lacey even pulled out her phone to film Ava's quiet rejection of the chicken dish. Ava's phone vibrated. Sasha, exec asked legal team standing by. PR holding statement drafted. Airport security and Global Airlines board rep en route to gate 14. Ava didn't smile, but the knot in her stomach loosened. The storm was forming. Tyler was already at the gate's glass wall filming a selfie video. And that's how you put an entitled Karen in her place. Oh, wait, no. In this case, it's, He trailed off as a team of suited figures swept past security, moving with brisk authority. One of them, a striking black woman in tailored gray, peeled off toward Ava with a small nod. "Miss Carter," she said quietly, "everything's set." "Good," Ava replied. The blonde attendant, Karen, stepped onto the jet bridge behind her, still with no idea what world she had just stepped into. Lacey followed, trying to check her phone unnoticed. The arrival gate was uncommonly packed. Cameras, journalists, airport management. A few curious economy passengers who hadn't yet cleared customs. Tyler's smirk faltered as he realized none of them were there for him. A man in a Global Airlines badge approached the crew. "All crew members of Flight 481, remain here," he instructed curtly. "What's going on?" Karen asked, her voice tight. "We need to prepare for our turnaround flight to London." "No, you won't," Ava answered for him, stepping into the small circle, her presence unignorable now. "You're done." Karen's laugh was brittle. "I'm sorry. Who are you to—" Ava didn't bother to answer. A second man, this one in a darker suit, stepped forward. "Allow me to introduce Ms. Ava Carter, CEO of Carter Global Holdings," he announced, which, as of last quarter, holds majority controlling interest in this airline. The words hung there, loud in the sudden, stunned hush. Karen's face drained of color. Lacey took a sharp step back. Tyler's phone dropped slightly from its selfie angle. Ava's voice was ice. "I was the black woman you publicly humiliated at 35,000 feet. The one denied service in the first-class cabin I partially own. The one your influencer pet mocked for your amusement. The one you treated as less than human." She turned, eyes sweeping over the gathered staff and bystanders. "This is what happens next." She gestured to the woman in gray. Effective immediately. You are all relieved of duty. Your security credentials revoked. The HR reviews you'll be attending aren't optional. Legal notices will follow within the hour. As for your future in this industry, let's just say it's over before it begins. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came. Tyler stepped forward. You can't do this. It was a joke. Ava's eyes pinned him in place. You're right, Mr. Drake. I can't. But the FAA's harassment statutes and hate crime provisions don't care if you intended it as humor. And Global Airlines Board is very sensitive about liability. Expect to hear from both my attorneys and your sponsors by morning. Around them, other passengers began pulling out phones, recording this reversal of fortune in real time. Ava stepped forward, voice firm, audible to everyone. This is about more than halibut. It's about dignity. About the difference between inconvenience and indignity, between a system that bends for privilege and one that punishes defiance. A cluster of executives from Global Airlines arrived, out of breath. The lead executive, a pale, older man, extended his hand. Ms. Carter, on behalf of the airline, Ava didn't take it. I'm holding a press conference at the terminal in 10 minutes. I suggest you gather your legal counsel. The man paled. Ava turned to the woman in gray. Let's get this done. As she walked toward the terminal doors, her phone pinged again. Sasha, exec asked your personal drivers here. Media outlets requesting interviews. Stock already down 7% since the live stream. Ava's fingers moved swiftly. Let them bleed. And with that, she stepped into the bright, unrelenting lights of the terminal, and into the next chapter of her legacy. The terminal felt different now. No longer just a point of transit, it had become a theater of reckoning. The sterile, beige walls and endless rows of arrival screens seemed to shrink in the presence of what was about to happen. Ava could feel the shift in air pressure around her. Not the kind from altitude, but the heavy, collective anticipation of people witnessing the moment power stopped pretending to be invisible. She stood still for a breath, letting it wash over her. The silent witnesses, the bold gawkers, the hushed conversations. Passengers from her flight loitered nearby, some of them the same ones who'd looked away mid-air when the attendants dismissed her like she was nothing. Now those same eyes clung to her as though seeking absolution. The influencer, Tyler Drake, hovered near a support column, phone lowered, his trademark cocky smirk long since vanished. He looked smaller here, not because the ceiling was higher or the space wider, but because arrogance shrinks in the face of consequence. Across the terminal, a makeshift media area had been assembled at record speed. Podiums dragged out, lighting rigs hastily adjusted. Microphones branded with major networks' logos jutted toward the empty stage. A sea of reporters waited, their curiosity electric. Ava felt her phone buzz again. Sasha, exec asked press conference room filled. Legal confirms full documentation. FAA rep en route. Board counsel suggests measured tone. Ava smiled faintly. Not tonight. She strode to the cluster of airline executives flanked by her own team. Sasha moved at her side, a master of logistics and fury in tailored heels. Ms. Carter, please. The head of Global Airlines North American Operations, Julian Hawthorne, began. His salt and pepper hair was immaculate, but there was a sheen of sweat on his temple. Let's handle this internally, out of public view. For the reputation of all parties involved. Ava leveled her gaze at him. The time for private meetings passed at cruising altitude. She stepped onto the low platform without ceremony, ignoring the flashbulbs and shouted questions. Thank you for gathering, she began, her voice steady, its resonance slicing through the terminal's murmur. This won't take long. The crowd hushed, as though the air itself bowed in recognition of a story about to be rewritten. I want to address what happened tonight on Flight 481 from London to New York. A small incident, some might say. A meal denied, a slight, a joke at my expense. But what occurred in that cabin wasn't about food or humor. It was about how we decide who is worthy of dignity and who isn't. She paused, scanning the faces. Karen and Lacey stood by security, their expressions frozen somewhere between shame and fury. Tyler Drake, phone forgotten at his side, stared at the floor. It was about how systems built to serve the privileged enable casual, reflexive prejudice. How the quiet bystanders, the ones who say nothing, who film discreetly, who look away, become accomplices. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. "I don't need your apologies," Ava continued, her voice now sharp as glass. "I need your accountability." She turned slightly, motioning to Sasha, who stepped forward and read from a prepared statement. "Effective immediately," Sasha announced. "The entire first-class cabin crew from Flight 481 is terminated for breach of conduct, harassment, and discrimination under corporate and FAA guidelines. In addition, Mr. Tyler Drake is hereby banned for life from all Global Airlines flights and affiliate carriers. Legal proceedings for defamation and harassment are underway." A collective intake of breath. "And to our silent witnesses," Ava added, gaze sweeping across the fellow passengers who hadn't spoken up mid-flight. "May your discomfort tonight remind you that neutrality in the face of injustice is a choice, one with consequences." A murmur of agreement from somewhere deep in the terminal. Julian Hawthorne cleared his throat, stepping up. "Ms. Carter, we at Global Airlines deeply regret." "Don't perform," Ava cut him off. "You regret the fallout, not the act." But that too is about to change. She gestured to the woman in gray, the new director of equity and customer experience Ava had hired on the drive from the airport. "Tomorrow morning," Ava announced, "we begin a full industry audit of racial and social bias in premium travel services. Not just here, but in every airline, hotel chain, private terminal, and luxury experience under Carter Global Holdings portfolio." The days of performative apologies are over. The terminal erupted in a wave of applause, not polite but raw. Passengers, employees, even a handful of security staff. Somewhere nearby, someone whispered, "It's about time." Ava gave a small nod. This isn't about retribution. It's about reclamation. Dignity isn't a luxury perk you reserve for the rich, the pale, or the powerful. It's a basic cost of humanity. The moment hung there, dense with meaning. And then she stepped down, her phone already vibrating with the aftermath. The PR crisis management calls, the stock alerts, the incoming flood of solidarity messages. Ava Carter didn't flinch. The plane had landed. The reckoning was airborne. Back in the VIP arrivals lounge, the mood was a curious mix of stunned silence and frantic murmured phone calls. Executives with freshly clammy foreheads huddled in corners, making urgent calls to lawyers and crisis teams, their faces tight with barely masked dread. Others paced, shell-shocked, as Ava Carter, still impeccably composed, settled into a leather armchair near the panoramic glass wall overlooking the tarmac. She might as well have been holding court. Her executive assistant, Sasha, stood nearby, already fielding the fallout. "They've pulled the crew's credentials," Sasha murmured, scanning her phone. "Tyler Drake's sponsors are dropping him like dead weight. 3 deals gone already." Ava sipped a glass of sparkling water, watching the runway lights shimmer in the distance. "Good. Keep the pressure clean, not messy. I don't want public theatrics from them. Let their silence speak volumes." She'd learned this long ago. The real victories happen quietly, in boardrooms and legal settlements, in the restructuring of power rather than the heat of spectacle. Still, there was satisfaction in knowing that the very people who had humiliated her above the clouds were now tumbling from the false heights of their own entitlement. Her phone buzzed. A message from the Global Airlines board liaison. "Board crisis meeting scheduled for 8 a.m. CEO requests private briefing with you beforehand. Full support pledged." Ava allowed herself a small, private smile. "Confirm. Tell them to expect restructuring proposals on their desk, and I mean before coffee." Across the room, Tyler Drake sat hunched in a corner, staring at his phone. Every few seconds, his face tightened further. Whatever bravado he'd carried on that plane had evaporated somewhere between Ava's announcement and the moment his agent's text arrived, severing all ties. Ava had seen it happen before. How swiftly the world recoiled when the cost of enabling prejudice became public currency. But the part that gnawed at her, the part Ava had no tolerance for, were the others, the passengers. Those first-class travelers, some of them titans of industry who had watched it happen. The denied meal, the condescending jokes, the humiliating comments, and had done nothing. Worse, some had filmed it, perhaps hoping for viral clout, only to shrink in cowardice when the tide turned. Ava turned toward Sasha. I want the manifest. Names, companies, affiliations, the ones who stayed silent, and the ones who laughed. Let's see how many of them hold supplier contracts with us. Sasha's smile was a blade, already compiling it. Ava leaned back. Injustice wasn't just about the perpetrators. It was about the culture that gave them permission, the luxury of impunity. This was her chance to fracture that foundation. Another message appeared on her phone, this one from an unfamiliar number, flagged through secure channels. Ms. Carter, name's Malik Owens. I was on your flight. I'm the lead engineer at Aviantech. I should have spoken up. If there's any way I can help moving forward, I want to. I owe you that much. Ava stared at the message for a moment, then replied, Meet me tomorrow, 9 a.m. at our Midtown office, and bring every incident you've seen in this industry that no one talks about. It's time we started documenting it. If one engineer could find his courage now, others would follow. Outside, a new shift of airline staff passed by the lounge windows, their faces tired, moving briskly to turn around the next flight. Ava watched them and wondered how many of them endured this kind of invisible violence in 1,000 small ways every day, ways no press conference would ever catch. That was the deeper sickness. Not a single bad flight crew, not one smug influencer, but a machine calibrated to dehumanize and then make that cruelty mundane. And now it would stop. Ava tapped her phone again. Sasha, pull the diversity audit we commissioned last year for luxury service partners. Move it up. Every vendor, every executive suite, every frequent flyer club. I want new equity clauses written into every contract by end of week. No exceptions. Consider it done, Sasha replied. This wasn't revenge. It was renovation. And Ava knew something her enemies didn't. When a system designed to exclude finally turns on itself, the damage multiplies. The fallout didn't stop with a few jobs lost or public apologies. It rewrote policies, renegotiated partnerships, and redefined who got to sit at what table. Her phone vibrated one more time. A name from years ago, Victor Ellis, one of the founding board members of Global Airlines. He'd mentored Ava when she first entered the world of corporate aviation investment, one of the few who hadn't been threatened by her brilliance. Ava saw the coverage. Proud of you. The old guard won't survive this, and thank God for that. Dinner next week? Ava smiled for real then, something warm threading into her chest. Some things she thought were worth enduring the long climb for. Let's go, she said to Sasha, rising. We've got a new industry to build. And as she walked out of the terminal, the lights of the runway flaring behind her like the dawn of something unforgiving and necessary, Ava Carter knew this was only the first act. The dawn broke over New York like a slow burn, the city's restless hum returning as though it hadn't just borne witness to a public reckoning hours earlier. But for Ava Carter, sleep had been neither option nor desire. She hadn't come this far, fought through boardrooms slick with condescension and institutional bias to hesitate now. By 7 a.m., she was seated at the head of a long glass conference table in Carter Global Holdings' Midtown headquarters, 62 floors above the Manhattan streets, where power didn't trickle down. It rained in sudden, merciless storms. Her legal counsel, PR lead, and Sasha moved like a unit, briefing her on every angle. The walls of the conference room displayed financial tickers, media coverage loops, and a real-time feed of Global Airlines' tumbling stock value. Dropped another 11% overnight, Sasha reported, handing her a tablet. Investor calls scheduled at noon. 2 class action suits filed this morning. Both unrelated to you, but the media's linking them as part of a pattern of toxic culture. Ava didn't even blink. Good. It's all part of the purge. Across from her, Julian Hawthorne, Global Airlines North American head, sat stiffly, his pale complexion even more drained than it had been the night before. His carefully rehearsed damage control tone didn't stand a chance against the storm Ava brought. "We appreciate your decisive action, Ms. Carter," he began. "The board was—" "Spare me," Ava cut in. "I didn't do this for the board." Julian flinched. Sasha allowed herself a subtle grin. Ava rose and walked to the panoramic window, the city spread out beneath her like a chessboard. "Julian," she said without turning, "do you know what it feels like to be invisible in a room where you outrank everyone, but still be asked if you're the assistant? The decorator? The charity case?" She faced him now, her voice steady but loaded. "I do. And last night, you let your brand, your people turn my dignity into theater at 35,000 feet. You're lucky I'm still willing to clean up your mess." The man swallowed hard, nodding. Ava tapped her tablet. The screen behind her flickered to life, displaying a new organizational chart for Global Airlines' executive branch. "Effective immediately," she announced, "the entire first-class experience division is dissolved. New leadership will be appointed from external candidates vetted through independent equity boards. Contracts with exclusive third-party hospitality partners are suspended pending a comprehensive audit." Julian's mouth opened in protest, but Ava silenced him with a glance. "The message is this: not performative apologies, not PR statements. Structural change." She pointed to another name on the screen. "As for you, Julian, pack your things." The room gasped. No one spoke. Sasha reached forward, already typing the termination paperwork into the secure portal. "And while we're at it," Ava continued, walking back to her chair, "every passenger manifest for the past 5 years. Cross-reference discrimination complaints with flight crew assignments. I want a report on my desk within 48 hours. Names, dates, outcomes. We're cleaning house." Julian slumped back, defeated. Ava tapped another screen. A press advisory lit up. "An hour from now, I'll hold a briefing. This isn't a scandal, it's a pivot point. Carter Global Holdings will spearhead an industry-wide equity initiative across all luxury travel partners. The ones who resist will lose their contracts." PR lead Marissa spoke up, eyes gleaming. "The media's calling you the Skyline Reformer. Socials flooded with passengers sharing their own stories overnight. It's already trending globally." Ava allowed herself a tight smile, not for vanity, for leverage. "Good," she said, "because we're not stopping here." The elevator chimed. Malik Owens, the young avian tech engineer who messaged her, stepped in hesitantly, a portfolio under his arm. His face was tense, but there was a fire in his eyes Ava recognized, the defiant hope of someone who finally, after years of swallowing injustice, felt the wind shift. "Ms. Carter," Malik began, I brought you something." He laid a folder on the table. Incident reports, witness statements, data on racial profiling and passenger upgrades, service denials, even subtle seat reassignments. No one else had dared collect it. "I've been documenting this for 4 years," Malik said quietly. "I thought no one would care." Ava rose, took the folder in both hands, and looked him square in the eye. "I care." She turned to the room. "This is what's next. Every name in these pages, every incident buried under corporate bureaucracy. We're digging them up." Malik's shoulders dropped, the weight of silence lifting for the first time in years. And in that moment, something far bigger than a corporate scandal sparked to life in that conference room. A movement that would ripple through every luxury lounge, every 5-star terminal, every elite travel brand that had long believed the skies belonged to them alone. Ava sat back down, the city waiting at her feet, Let's get to work. The meeting broke into furious, focused activity, and somewhere deep inside her, Ava Carter knew. She wasn't just rewriting policy. She was rewriting the blueprint for what power looked like and who got to wield it. The air outside the Carter Global headquarters tasted like impending change, thick with the tension of media vans, murmuring crowds, and the staccato click of high-powered executives' dress shoes on polished floors. New York, restless as ever, had begun to notice that something seismic was underway. And it wasn't just a corporate scandal anymore. It was a cultural reckoning. At precisely 10 a.m., Ava Carter stepped onto the private helipad atop the building, the city's skyline framing her like a crown. 2 helicopters waited, one for her, one for the terminated flight crew of Flight 481, still clueless as to the full scale of the storm bearing down on them. Karen, Lacey, and the other attendants stood clustered together, guarded by Global Airlines security personnel who, less than 12 hours ago, would have addressed them with cheerful familiarity. Now, their faces were tight, avoidant, studiously neutral. The balance of power had shifted in ways the crew had never imagined. Karen, eyes bloodshot but her chin still lifted in brittle defiance, approached one of the guards. "This is ridiculous. I've been with the company 11 years. I know people on the board. I demand a meeting with corporate." The security officer didn't even flinch. "Ms. Carter will address you shortly." That name hit them like a slap. Karen frowned. "Carter? Ava Carter?" Lacey swallowed visibly, her carefully constructed world beginning to tilt. "Oh my God," one of the junior attendants whispered. "I thought she looked familiar. She's the majority shareholder," Lacey finished, voice cracking. Tyler Drake, who'd been pacing near the helipad's edge with his agent's panicked voicemails clogging his notifications, stopped cold. He glanced at Ava, really seeing her for the first time, not as the quietly elegant woman he mocked at 35,000 feet, but as the storm itself. Ava turned toward them then, walking across the helipad with the kind of steady, unhurried grace that came not from wealth, but from the unshakable knowledge of earned power. Sasha and Malik followed closely behind. Karen stepped forward, desperate now. "Ms. Carter, please." Ava held up a hand, and it was remarkable how quickly silence fell. "I've spent my career watching people like you behave as though civility, fairness, and basic human dignity were optional," she began, her voice as precise and unrelenting as the wind snapping at their clothes. "You treated me like an intruder in a space I paid to occupy. Not because I was out of place, but because your prejudice said so." She let that land, then gestured toward the helicopters. "The irony is you were so concerned about status up there," she gestured skyward, "that you failed to recognize who truly holds the power." Karen's face contorted. I didn't mean, you meant every moment of it," Ava cut in, voice sharp as a scalpel. "And your intent no longer matters." She turned to the security team. "Escort them to the transport. I don't want a single one of them wearing a Global Airlines badge again." The crew was ushered toward one of the waiting helicopters, protests and mutters trailing behind them. Ava didn't watch them leave. They were no longer the story. What remained was legacy. Tyler Drake stayed frozen in place until Malik spoke, his voice low and steady. "You ought to live stream this part, too." Tyler's face twisted, but for once he had no quip. "Mr. Drake," Ava called over, turning to him. "Consider this your final boarding announcement. You're officially banned from all Global Airlines flights, affiliate properties, and hospitality services globally." His jaw dropped. You can't do that." "I already have," she replied. "And just so you understand the scale, your digital footprint's being flagged across every partner brand under Carter Global Holdings. That includes resort chains, luxury car services, and the private terminal lounges you love so much." A fresh wave of whispers rippled through the small crowd. The world Tyler Drake had built his brand upon was shrinking faster than he could post about it. "Security," Ava said softly, and Tyler was led toward the second helicopter. Malik stepped forward then, holding the folder he'd brought that morning. Ms. Carter, one more thing. The Avian Tech files, the ones documenting service disparities. There's a pattern that goes beyond one airline. He opened the folder to reveal a map marked with hotspots across multiple major carriers and airports worldwide. Ava studied it, the faintest hint of a smile at the corner of her mouth. Thank you, Malik. Looks like we've got work to do. She turned to Sasha. Get me meetings with every equity and compliance officer in our partner brands. This industry overhaul starts today. Sasha nodded, already typing. Ava glanced up at the helicopter meant for her. The city stretched endlessly below, 1,000 glass towers and crowded streets. She thought of every black woman who had been told to move to the back of the line, to take what was offered, to accept humiliation as a price for proximity. Thought of every quiet, infuriating moment of polite exclusion. She wasn't just reclaiming her place. She was building new ones. For every one of us who's ever been made to feel invisible, Ava murmured, more to herself than anyone else, I'll make them see us now. And as the rotor blades began to churn, kicking up loose papers and forgotten arrogance, Ava Carter stepped into the helicopter, no longer a passenger in anyone's narrative. The conference room at Global Airlines headquarters had never seen a gathering like this. Not in its sleek, sanitized history of quarterly earnings meetings and merger briefings. This was different. There was no time for curated floral centerpieces or branded glass bottles of still and sparkling. Today, the air tasted of consequence. Ava Carter sat at the head of the long, dark walnut table, flanked by her personal counsel, Sasha, Malik Owens, and Marissa from PR. Arrayed before her were the remaining senior executives of Global Airlines, faces ashen, ties slightly loosened, each one painfully aware that the room they once controlled now belonged to her. Julian Hawthorne's seat, conspicuously vacant, told its own story. The board's chair, Margaret Ellison, an older woman whose formidable reputation was built on surviving scandal after scandal, cleared her throat. Ms. Carter, she began, tone cautious. I trust we're here to resolve this matter swiftly and preserve shareholder confidence. Ava tilted her head, amusement flickering in her gaze. Preservation implies we want to maintain the existing order. I intend to dismantle it. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. Malik slid a slim folder across the table to Margaret. I'd recommend you read the passenger incident logs for the last 5 years, Chairwoman. Cross-referenced against crew assignments and complaint dismissals. Margaret hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a litany of ignored grievances. A black executive in Milan denied lounge access despite platinum status. An Asian grandmother refused service on a first-class flight to Dubai. A Latina surgeon humiliated for sitting in the wrong seat on a Miami-bound plane. Name after name, file after file. It was a brutal, undeniable record of rot. Margaret's hands trembled slightly as she closed the folder. Jesus! Ava leaned forward, her voice low and cutting. I warned you. The difference is that this time, it happened to someone with the power to bring the whole system down. Marissa spoke next, her voice crisp, controlled. We're trending in 17 countries, 3 more lawsuits filed this morning. An emergency shareholder vote's been requested to review leadership. A hush. Ava didn't pause. Here's how this works. Step 1. The immediate and public termination of all implicated staff and mid-level management. Step 2. The dismantling of the first-class experience department. Step 3. An independent equity and ethics council installed with full veto power on hiring, contracts, and marketing for this airline and every hospitality partner we control. Margaret's brow furrowed. That's unprecedented. It's necessary, Ava replied. Another executive cleared his throat, sweat beading his temple. Ms. Carter will lose investors. Major accounts will panic. Ava's gaze pinned him to his seat. The kind of investors we'll lose are the ones we can afford to shed. She tapped her tablet, bringing up a new slide on the wall's massive screen. Introducing the Equitable Skies Initiative, Ava announced. A total overhaul of premium travel services, employment equity audits, passenger rights enforcement, and public reporting. Not a PR stunt, a blueprint for dismantling luxury service racism. The room absorbed it in stunned silence, and then Malik spoke. For years, people like me collected data in secret, whispered about it over drinks, or traded stories in DMs because speaking up would cost us our jobs. Ms. Carter didn't just give us a seat at this table. She's rewriting the whole room. Several executives' expressions shifted, some in shame, some in awe, most in fear. Margaret straightened, her voice smaller than it had been a minute before. You'll have full board support. Ava nodded once. You don't have a choice. Marissa fielded the next wave. I've scheduled press and investor briefings. We'll lead with accountability, not spin. Frame this as a reckoning we chose to face head-on. And the crew? One executive muttered, breaking his silence. Gone, Sasha answered coolly. Pending legal action and full FAA review. Ava rose then, the weight of the room following her. For every executive, partner, and frequent flyer who's ever benefited from this silent systemic harm, understand this isn't a correction, it's a replacement. The era of quiet prejudice wrapped in white linen service ends today. Margaret let out a long breath. This'll make headlines for months. Good, Ava said. Let them write every word. And with that, she strode from the room, not a woman burdened by scandal, but one reshaping the very air the old world thought it owned. In the hallway, Malik fell in step beside her. You meant it, didn't you? About dismantling the whole damn thing. Ava glanced at him, a fierce kind of calm in her eyes. I didn't fight my way into this airspace just to make it comfortable for myself. I came to burn down the gate. The elevators opened. The future waited. And for the first time in the long, bruised history of luxury travel, someone like Ava Carter was in charge of the keys. By noon, the story had already cracked open the corporate world like a fault line. Every major news outlet plastered Ava Carter's face across their homepages. Headlines were variations on the same theme. Luxury airline execs ousted after CEO exposes systemic racism in premium travel. Skyline reformer. Ava Carter dismantles industry gatekeeping. First-class reckoning, Carter Global Holdings forces airline overhaul. The ripple wasn't contained to global airlines. It hit hotel chains, cruise lines, private car services. CEOs scrambled for equity statements. HR managers dug out decades-old incident reports, praying no one would surface them. PR teams who once mocked diversity clauses in contracts were now drafting emergency pledges to avoid being next in the crosshairs. Ava knew because she saw the alerts in real time. Every phone call, every internal memo leaked to her office. The ecosystem she'd silently tolerated for years was collapsing, exposed not by accident, but by the inevitability of its own cruelty. She stood at the window of her office now, Manhattan sprawling endlessly beneath her, a cold glass of ginger soda in her hand. Sasha entered, holding 2 documents. You need to see this. Ava took them. The first was a report from Carter Global's compliance team. In just 12 hours, they'd uncovered a pattern of pay disparities and promotion denials within global airlines that mirrored the flight crew's behavior. Black and brown employees consistently rated lower for cultural fit on internal evaluations. Executive promotions overwhelmingly skewed toward white candidates, often with inferior performance records. The second was a list of anonymous stories pouring in through a hotline Ava had launched at dawn. The Clear Skies Project. Airline workers, passengers, luxury travel staff. Harassment in 5-star hotel suites. Denied upgrades at elite lounges. Racial profiling at customs fast-track lanes. Ava's jaw tightened. Each one a reminder this wasn't isolated. It never was. Start pulling names, she said. Every executive tied to these disparities. Every manager who buried a report. Freeze bonus payments. Initiate termination protocols. Sasha grinned. Already ahead of you. Ava's phone vibrated again. Maliko and CNN's online too. They want an exclusive sit-down. Ava hesitated. Interviews had their place, but she wasn't here to be a media darling. She was here to recalibrate an industry. Text them, 6 p.m. Studio A. They'll get the story I choose to tell. Sasha's second device chimed. She glanced at it, her brow arching. And you'll love this one. 3 other airlines just contacted us. They want to preemptively partner on your Equitable Skies initiative. They're scared, Ava, terrified. Ava set down her glass. Perfect, she murmured. It's time they learned what it feels like to move at someone else's pace. The deeper irony wasn't lost on her. For years, these corporations had been the gatekeepers, issuing unspoken decrees about who belonged and who was merely permitted. And now, they were knocking at her door, desperate to stay ahead of the fallout she'd triggered. Sasha lingered. You realize you're not just changing policy anymore, right? This thing, it's bigger than flights and hospitality. Ava turned from the window, a rare softness in her expression. Good, it was always supposed to be. A sharp knock came at the door. Marissa, the PR lead, stepped in, her own grin sharp as a dagger. You've got to see this. Someone dug up Tyler Drake's sponsors list. Every major brand's dropped him. But here's the best part. His own management company issued a statement denouncing him. Full retraction, apology, contract termination. Ava arched a brow. Public or private? Both. Ava chuckled, a low, satisfied sound. Let them crawl, I'm not finished. Her phone chimed again, a personal number this time. Victor Ellis, the old board member who'd messaged her the night before. Victor, they used to say you'd never last in this space, that you were too loud, too proud, too black for this brand of subtle backroom power. I'm glad you made them eat those words. Ava's chest tightened, just for a second. She sent back, I didn't come this far to whisper, Victor. She placed the phone down and straightened. All right, she said to the room. Assemble our legal team, get the international division leads on a call, and tell Sasha to coordinate with Malik's engineering contacts. I want the blueprint for this new audit protocol signed by tomorrow. Sasha nodded. And after that? Ava smiled. After that, we expand. Hotels, private travel, tech firms, any luxury space built to exclude. We burn it clean. The room vibrated with that certainty that this wasn't a moment. It was a movement, and Ava Carter was its storm. The afternoon slipped into evening, but for Ava Carter, time had become irrelevant. She wasn't chasing hours anymore. She was chasing history, and history, as it turned out, was catching up fast. In the dimly lit press room of Studio A, the one CNN had requested for her exclusive, the energy was electric. Journalists shuffled notes, producers adjusted camera angles, and technicians checked sound levels. It wasn't just another interview. It was a declaration. Ava stood behind the curtain, her reflection framed in a sleek dark panel of glass. The woman looking back at her wore the same tailored navy suit from the night before, not for lack of options, but as a reminder. Power didn't require constant reinvention. It simply endured. Sasha entered, tablet in hand. All 3 networks streaming. The Clear Skies hotline passed 5,000 submissions. And we've had 12 more partner brands request equity review meetings for tomorrow. Ava gave a slow, approving nod. Good. Keep pushing them. I want contracts redrafted before the weekend. Also, Sasha continued, her voice dropping, the dismissed flight crew started a GoFundMe this afternoon, claiming wrongful termination, cancellation by mob. It's already plateaued. Donors pulling out as soon as they realize who it is. Ava's expression didn't flicker. Let them feel the weight of public memory, for once. She stepped through the curtain then into a room flooded with light and cameras, the hum of anticipation thick enough to taste. The anchor, a polished woman in her 40s, rose to greet her. Miss Carter, she smiled. Thank you for sitting with us. Ava shook her hand, then took her seat opposite. The air smelled faintly of studio lighting and nerves. We go live in 3, 2. The red light blinked on. Good evening, the anchor began. Tonight we're joined by Ava Carter, business magnate, majority shareholder of Global Airlines, and now the face of one of the most sweeping corporate reckonings in recent history. Ava met the camera with steady, unflinching eyes. I'm not here to be a face, she said. I'm here to be a catalyst. The anchor blinked, then recovered smoothly. Then let's start at the beginning. What happened on Flight 481? Ava's voice was even. I was denied a meal I'd paid for, mocked by a social media figure, ignored by airline staff, and treated like a trespasser in a space my money, and more importantly, my humanity, entitled me to occupy. She let the words land. The anchor hesitated. Some say it was an isolated incident. And they're wrong, Ava replied. It was a symptom. One thread in a centuries-old fabric woven to exclude certain people from certain spaces. Luxury travel has long been a reflection of who we think deserves to be visible. I chose to pull that thread loose. The anchor shifted. Since then, the fallout's been immense. Executives fired, stock values hit, other industries bracing. Did you intend for it to escalate like this? Ava didn't hesitate. I intended to make it impossible for anyone in power to look away. Injustice thrives in polite silences. I'm not here for silence. A murmur of approval from behind the cameras. The anchor pressed on. Some critics say this is performative activism, a play for corporate optics. How do you respond? Ava's laugh was dry, sharp. They said the same thing when we integrated schools, when women demanded the vote, when marriage equality passed. The truth is, systems of exclusion will always mock the first push against them, until they fall. A pause. Then, the anchor offered the question every viewer had waited for. And what's next, Ms. Carter? Ava leaned forward slightly, her voice lowering like a promise. We build a new model, not just for airlines, but for every luxury space, hotels, private travel, yacht charters, executive retreats, any place where wealth once insulated prejudice. She lifted a tablet from the table, displaying the Equitable Skies Initiative logo. This isn't a policy shift. It's a blueprint, mandatory audits, independent ethics boards. Public transparency on who's hired, fired, promoted, or denied service. And why? The anchor's eyes widened. You expect other companies to comply? I expect they won't have a choice, Ava said, because every contract, every partnership under Carter Global Holdings will demand it, and any brand that wants to survive this new market will follow. A low buzz from the control room. Sasha's text flashed onto Ava's private screen. Equitable Skies just hit 2 million hashtag mentions in under 24 hours. Ava smiled, faint but unmistakable. The anchor concluded. Ms. Carter, you've been called a disruptor, a reformer, even an instigator. How would you describe yourself? Ava didn't miss a beat. I'm a woman with a long memory and no tolerance left for polite oppression. If that makes me an instigator, so be it. The broadcast light dimmed. Applause, restrained at first, then growing, filled the studio. Ava Carter rose, knowing this wasn't the end of the story. It was the middle of a movement. And tomorrow, the next industry would fall. Night fell heavy over Manhattan, though the city's heartbeat never slowed. It pulsed in illuminated windows, car horns echoing between skyscrapers and distant flashes of light from helicopters tracing patterns over the skyline. But high above the streets, in the glass and steel tower that housed Carter Global Holdings, a different kind of storm churned. Ava Carter stood alone in her office, the sprawling view behind her, an endless canvas of city lights. For the first time in 24 relentless hours, the room was quiet. No calls, no emergency alerts, no damage reports, just the steady hum of her own pulse. The ache behind her eyes reminded her that she hadn't slept. Didn't matter. History wasn't made on a full night's rest. Sasha stepped inside, softer now, carrying a leather folder. It's done, she said. Final termination notices issued. Contracts amended. The FAA issued a statement endorsing the new oversight regulations, and Malik's already working with the international division leads for the hospitality review. Ava nodded, accepting the folder. She flipped it open, scanning the names, not of those who fell, but of those now elevated. Faces who looked like her, who sounded like her, who would never again have to wait for someone else's permission to exist in the luxury spaces they'd earned. Sasha hesitated at the doorway. "You okay?" Ava's eyes stayed on the folder. "Not yet," she said quietly. "But I will be." The truth was, the weight hadn't lifted. Not really. Even as power shifted in boardrooms and policies changed, Ava knew what she was dismantling was older than airplanes, older than airlines. It was an architecture of exclusion carefully designed to teach people like her to settle for proximity instead of ownership. And proximity wasn't enough. The GoFundMe for the fired crew had quietly vanished from trending lists. Tyler Drake's accounts had gone dark. The first-class passengers from Flight 481 had begun issuing awkward public statements, empty apologies offered to no one in particular. The stock market, which had shuddered at the morning's announcements, began a slow correction as investors realized that Ava wasn't simply burning things down. She was building something better. Victor Ellis texted again. "They'll call you ruthless now." Good. The world's never changed by the merciful. Ava smiled, something sharp and heavy in her chest loosening just a little. She walked to the window, watching headlights flicker in the dark like tiny, restless prayers. In homes and offices across the country, Black women sat upright tonight, some crying, some raging, some watching, feeling in their bones that a seam somewhere had torn open. Ava could almost hear them. Ava Carter, who'd been told at 17 that girls like her weren't born to own companies. At 25, advised to smile more in boardrooms. At 30, passed over for a promotion she trained the man ahead of her to take. And at 38, denied halibut on a plane she owned. A halibut, of all things. But power, Ava knew, rarely revealed itself in grand moments. It showed in the 1,000 tiny humiliations you survived until the day you didn't have to anymore. Tonight she didn't have to. Behind her, Malik's report blinked to life on her screen. Data points, incident patterns, staffing disparities, proof of what Black travelers had always known but never been able to quantify. And tomorrow that data would become action. Ava picked up her phone one last time. To Sasha. Draft the next initiative, not just airlines, high-end retail, country clubs, private medical concierge services, no more invisible doors. Sasha's reply came seconds later. On it. Ava exhaled slowly, a breath years in the making. For the first time in her life, she wasn't at the mercy of the gatekeepers. She was the architect now. The world she was designing wouldn't be polite. It wouldn't ask for permission. It would be inconvenient and unflinching, a blueprint not just for equity, but for the dismantling of a culture that taught Black bodies they were to be tolerated, not celebrated, in elite spaces. And when the reckoning came, it wouldn't arrive with a press release. It would come, as it always should have, from within. Ava Carter turned away from the city and toward her desk, the dawn not yet visible, but promised. This time, it would rise on her terms.